Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Easton Park Talk. I'm here with James Ball, otherwise known as JBALL, which is his nickname at the poker house that he's a co-owner of called Bullets off of Manchac. JBALL, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I love poker. I'm bad at it, but I don't know bad. I'm a forever student. But where did your passion for poker come from?
Well, for me, honestly, and I always think in these moments where we're talking about this, Doyle Brunson quote, he had a lot of good ones, but one of them is the poker takes a minute to learn, a lifetime to master. So the truth is I've been playing poker for 30 years now. That tells you how old I am.
Yeah.
But I'm still learning. You know, we're all still learning. If we're not, we're probably going straight down, because it's either we're growing or going. There's no in between, especially with poker.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's I think my favorite thing about poker is the community aspect of it. We've made some of our best friends at the poker table.
For sure.
And I'm stealing this from my husband, but he says, like, you know, you sit at a table for hours, sometimes 4, 6, 8, 12 hours, depending where you are and what you're doing, with usually the same group of people, and you get to know them, right? Because you're sitting with them for a long time, and you see how they win, you see how they lose, and you're dealing with money, right? And so it's just a really cool way to like really get to know people. And you know, we've been to Bullets, and I can't wait to hear about the story about Bullets, but it seems like the community at Bullets is very much the same. It's just people come, they know each other. It feels like home there. It's awesome.
That is kind of by design.
Okay.
Where our tagline since we opened has been for players by players.
Yeah.
And we really take that to heart. It's not just a line, in other words, because we are players, my partner and I, and so we know and understand what makes us want to be motivated to come back to a place. We both have home game experience before we started the clubs. So when you're running a home game, you will find out quick how it is that you can get players not just to show up once, but to come back.
Yeah.
And it takes more than words or promises. It has to be a level of service and consistency with how you're actually running the game. I feel like that has value. And I appreciate that, you know, just recently somebody that I knew from 30 years ago, when I first started the game, he was also new to the game. I haven't seen the man in probably 15 years.
Okay.
And he came to Bullets and he said, I think my friend JBALL has this place. And so somebody told me about him, and so I came and saw him, and sure enough, we reconnect. And that was one of the first things he said is, man, I always appreciated how consistent you've been with how you run the games. And to me, it's pretty simple. You treat everyone fairly, literally. Doesn't matter what their story is or who they are as a person. How they act at the game is really all that matters to us.
Right.
And what's really great, going back to something you mentioned, is I love that a multimillionaire can sit right next to a guy who works at Chick-fil-A or whatever, and they are equals.
Yeah.
In our minds, they certainly are, and at the table, they really are, because as long as they both bought in for the min or max of the game, then they are the same as far as a player goes in the realm of poker. And that is very rare in anywhere else in life that you're going to find that. So in that way, poker offers some things well beyond the money. Okay, if you can get good at poker and make some money, and that's great, but well beyond that, the relationships and the sort of kind of transactional behavior that occurs over time at a table is very unique. I've found in my years of playing. Yeah,
it's like, you know, playing poker, and again, this is not for, poker's hard. You're playing the people. Well, and Steve would tell me if you're playing poker well, you're playing the people, not the cards. But I'm still learning like the cards, and it's hard. But in the math and your odds and all of that stuff, and there's so much going through your head at one time. But you know, I think that when you're sitting at a poker table, the people that perhaps you wouldn't have found in the wild, like out in the world or in your social circle, but you get to know, which I think is beautiful.
Absolutely,
and it's so cool. And like, there's some of our friends that we've invited over for poker that, you know, other friends that we play poker with more often or whatever, they're like, how do you know these people? And we're like, poker. And it's awesome, you know, and it really does, like, it takes down the social norms. It takes the economic, you know, like affluence or not or whatever out of it. And it's just, you're playing people and their stories, and you're usually sitting with them, hopefully, for a very long time. And I think it's just a really cool community building game.
Absolutely.
It's also a psychology game and a math game, and it's a very complex, very layered game.
True.
Yeah.
Hence the lifetime to master part.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not a simple thing, and it's like, and then it's also like, on top of all that, you're like kind of playing against yourself in a way.
Yes. Positively. I can be my own worst enemy if I'm not mentally astute to the moment and what's going on and my powers of observation. If I'm distracted with life and other things, then I'm not going to be as observant because I'm, you know, internalizing things or whatever it may be. And of course, everyone's different. Yeah. Everyone has their different, you know, some people are better at the math stuff and not so good with the human interaction element of it. Mm-hmm. Other people thrive at being able to talk and communicate, and terrible at math, which is probably more where I'm at.
Okay, fair enough.
So, you know, but at the end of the day, you're right. There are all those elements to it. The game itself is very simple. Right. There's 52 cards in the deck, and once you know the hand ranking, you're off to the races. But everything else is what constantly takes that evolution, I feel like. Yeah.
And just like the skill levels of how you play and who you play. And I'm kind of at the point in my game right now where I'm deciding and I'm lucky because we play the same people. And I'm not going to name names because I can't give away my secrets, but who do I want to be in a hand with? You know, and because I know them, I've been watching them. But it's just so fascinating watching people like, I've watched you play. It's impressive to watch you play.
Oh, thank you.
And some other people that we play with where you're just like, all the things going on and the distractions, and some people are drinking and some people aren't, and some people are there socially and some people are not. And like, just keep it. It's like all of you guys that are good. And I'm not trying to like blow your cover, you know, that you're like a great poker player, but like just like the tabs that I can see going through y'all's minds sometimes, it's fascinating to watch.
And on that point, you know, I've always been a big fan of arriving to a game early, mm-hmm. because even down to seeing how people approach and walk into a game, you can get information on that. Yeah. You know, the things people will often say before the game ever starts can be very telling. Sure. To whether they're stressed or whether they're focused on what's in front of them or what's happening at home or work or whatever it may be. Right. So you're right, all those things. Now, when I play at the club, I do something that I don't recommend for anybody, which is when I play cash. Now, not tournaments. Okay. When I play tournaments, I feel like you've got to play those straight up and play your game, which may include occasionally bluffing and things like that. Sure. Right? But in my cash game, I actually play a very straight up, very dry, like I don't bluff. And also I have a rule that like I will get up for a player as soon as they want the seat. Mm-hmm. So I'm often having to get up early anyway. Yeah. So it makes for a very challenging time when you're only betting when you have good hands and never floating with, you know, marginal hands or whatever, because you feel like, oh, I believe I can beat this person if I just bet, but I don't do it anyway at my club because I also don't want people to feel like I'm trying to take advantage of them. So normally I'm just playing what I would call very rock-like neutral poker.
Okay. Well, and actually, like, that's a really good segue to the next point is at Bullets, like, Steve and I went, it was probably a year ago we went for the first time, and mm-hmm. Both of us were not playing poker very well. So you got to know also like your bankroll and where you're at and if you're doing well or not. And like, what do you got to do to deal with that? But, you know, when we were there, the first time we went in, and we went with two friends of ours from Easton Park here in the neighborhood. So there's four of us all together, and like, we were all a little intimidated, you know, like we had played in card houses before. We've all played in casinos before. Like we've played poker. We know how to play poker. We know how it goes. But like going into Bullets was, I don't know. It was like you're going to a bunch of people who you know are playing together, who play together a lot, and they all know each other by first name, and there's advantage to that, and that's what you get from playing a lot with the same people. But we felt so welcome and so like respected, and like here are the rules, and you ran a really, really like it felt like a very honest game because it was, and then also at the same time like what you were talking about, you guys did. I think it was just the four of us that came for maybe like a Monday night tournament or something, and it
And
was
you're talking about last year?
I think so,
Okay.
yeah. But and I'm sure it still stands the same way. Is that like we showed up and there were 4 of us, and you were like, oh, there's people here to play poker. Like it was a tournament where you were like, and you guys hustled and you got people to come play the game, and like you played, and you guys called other people to come play, and they did. And I just thought that was so like, just so cool of you guys to do that. And we felt special about it. It was like, oh, how, and we went back for a while until like our bankroll was like, hey, we need to hold off here. But is that kind of like part of your strategy? Is that like welcoming?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, if we were, and I'm not going to name names either, but if we were a large club like some of the other ones around the state,
yep,
it would be a lot more challenging to do the little things and customer service driven things that we try to do consistently. And literally from day one, though, this was our plan and our motto was to try to do. Now, with that said, you're never going to take care of 100% of poker players and make them happy 100% of the time. That world, unfortunately, doesn't exist because we poker players, and I'm including myself, can be very picky and like things how we want them. But very as simply put as we can, we try to provide people with a really comfortable environment that is safe and is going to be, fair and equitable for everyone playing the game. We're going to try to provide creature comfort stuff like food. We give away sodas. We have, we have a beer and wine license, but we try to be very low cost on all of those things too, so that you're not wanting to get up and leave to go get one of those things. We try to provide them in-house as much as we can. So our chef is awesome. She's does amazing. Really good food. And it's not even bragging because it's just like everyone says the same thing for so long. I don't believe I've had one complaint ever other than her food is gone. I hear that complaint because unfortunately she does kind of sell out eventually and get rid of all her food. But for real, it's been awesome having someone in house that's been such a great part of the team. She's working like usually 5 or 6 days a week for us too.
Dang, okay.
For a time before her, we were using different chefs, and unfortunately, some of them had different skill levels and things like that. And so consistency is one thing I know, not being in the food world, that consistency is a thing, right?
Yeah.
And if it can't be consistent, then it's a problem immediately. It can be the best meal in the world, but if the next time it's not. So, again, our chefs in the past were awesome overall, but she's just had the absolute best results of anyone we've had around. So it's been really fantastic to get to have her around so much and have her be such a big part of the team.
She's awesome. And I think the cool thing, the first time we all went, I think she made enchiladas or something, and it was just like, whoa, this is real good.
Yes.
And she was and everyone that works for you is just incredible. The girls that do drinks and then the food, and then the dealers are spectacular. Like,
oh, thanks for saying so.
Yeah, no, they're all so great. And if we could talk about that for a second, because that's like, the dealing is, those guys got to be quick. They've got to be accurate. They have to be fair. And they, at least in my experience, they always are. And very respectful and very just like professional. It feels like they're good. They know what they're doing. So like, how do you find those guys? Guys and ladies.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
And in a few cases, there were some people that already had experience, but I would say a good portion of our team, past and current, didn't really have that experience. So we trained them, and it's in a lot of ways, we actually prefer to have someone. What I want is someone with poker experience playing. So they know the little intricacies that are very difficult to teach someone who's never played the game.
Yeah.
So when I say from scratch, I mean like they've had the player, but they've never been in the box. Because a lot of people I've noticed over the years say, man, that's such an easy job. These guys make too much money. I've had a few of those people convert to dealers, and they've come to me and said, hey, can you train me and let me work for you? And every one of them, without exception, has always said afterwards, oh my gosh, I owe so many people an apology because I thought it was just about pitching cards.
No.
And now that I understand all that it really entails, the truth is you're wearing an accountant hat, a dealer hat, and certainly a referee hat at times,
Yes.
or certainly an announcer, like a calling play-by-play on the radio. That's how I actually train our dealers to think about it. Certainly when you're new to a table, dealer-wise, you should be announcing all the action as if somebody is trying to keep up with where the action is without actually being there. And I don't mean like, Steve bets 50 or whatever, but I just mean like making sure people know where the action is. Okay, bet, raise, re-raise, all in.
Yeah.
Verbal is a big part of the game. And when
Right.
I go around the country, not to indict any particular place, I won't say it, but so many times the dealers are just silent. They don't care. They're pitching the cards and they're just sitting there waiting for the players to figure it out.
Right.
And that makes for a really bad game in my experience.
Yeah, I agree.
You're not getting many hands out. People usually at the energy from the dealer can make or break how the energy of the players are too, a lot of times.
Yeah.
So when you have dealers that are upbeat and still keeping up with the action and making it more fun and engaging, then it just makes it more fun and engaging for everyone. So we hear a lot that like, man, you guys run this place professionally, but it feels like a home game. And that is sort of exactly what we hoped to accomplish when we opened.
You nailed it. And it's, you totally did, because it is, at least with the dealers. And so we own an HR company. And so I can't help but watch employees interact with their boss and kind of analyze that a little bit. And not only are they clearly very well trained, because no matter who's dealing, at least in my experience, the experience feels the same no matter what. It always feels very fair. And even when because things do get tense in poker, like you're dealing with sometimes thousands of dollars. And even if you're dealing with $10, it doesn't matter. It's the part of the game. And I felt like every dealer has handled tense situations and joyous situations, which there's usually, there's two people involved at the end most of the time, and one goes the other way. But it's always been really, really professional. But what I will say that I've noticed and I've found to be very cool is that they have a respect for you that is noticeable. And I think that that's really cool. And so, like, if we could talk a little bit about that, like, where do you think that respect comes from?
I would say there's probably several answers to that, but at the end of the day, pretty much all of our dealers are also players as well.
Okay.
So it's easy for us to try to we focus on that level of dedication to, hey, try to put yourself in your audience's shoes, in this case your players at your table, so the way you would want to be treated, that's the best way to go ahead and do it while you're in the box as well.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, not everyone is, like I said, not everyone's the same, of course, but there are some pretty standard things you can do. So, for instance, some of our dealers do this better than others, but like when players want to engage in conversation that isn't about the action at hand, that can be troublesome because that leaves the dealer less focused on the action at hand. It can also distract other players who are now engaged in the conversation and not following the action. So we try to have our dealers not do that, but of course it's such a friendly environment.
Right.
You're never going to stop human interaction at its base level from occurring. So if somebody goes, "Hey, Chris, good to see you," Chris is going to want to say hi, or whoever it may be, so this is a reality of our challenge that we have, which is always trying to find that balance with, professional, standardized running of a game, but but we also don't want robots. We want people with personalities, both in the dealing the game and also playing in the game.
Yeah.
And you see that come out too, I'm sure, with, people feel comfortable enough and now they feel like they can let their personality out, and it's not just ho-hum, quiet, you can hear a pin drop. Like, I go to some poker rooms and that's how it is. Like, either people are mad or they're not saying anything.
Right.
And there's certainly not a lot of like fun interaction, where I would say that really is never the case at Bullets. Like, there's always that fun and engagement while there's still real poker. So we get a good mix, I would say, too, of what we kind of refer to as your general rec player, who is just having fun. They have a real job and a life and a family, and so they're never going to be playing multiple days a week, certainly not 7 days a week. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have your, hardcore grinder who is an everyday player and that's what they do for a living.
Right.
We get more of the rec side of things. We do get some pro players for sure.
Sure.
But when I say get, I mean they choose to come because
Right.
what we haven't ever done, and by choice, is, hey, let's bring in a pro and pay them to come play at our place and make us look cooler. And we just never thought that made a lot of sense. Not to say that we're totally opposed to it either,
Sure.
but what I'm saying is, like, to me, it's inherent in your regulars that come. I'm happy to report our regulars will welcome the newcomers. It's not just our staff. Our players are actually like, oh, hey, my name is Jay.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. And by the end, you're actually getting to know that person and your friends. By the end of maybe the first night, certainly the first couple of times, a lot of people come in very quiet. And after a few days, they're like, friends with everybody and totally out of their shell. And it's awesome to watch, to be honest,
I've got to go back because you answered very humbly and I appreciate it. But so your dealers, they respect you, like you being like me as a player for sure, but you, JBALL, as their boss, like there's a level of respect that I can just tell that they have for you. And like they watch you. And again, this is just my HR brain coming out of this, but like when you move, they've got eyes on you. They're watching you. Like you're leading that room. And I've never met your partner, but I've only seen you there. I'm sure he's also an incredible leader, but like, the amount of respect and just like you can tell that they respect you and that they look up to you. So like where do you think that comes from?
Well, I don't know. Some days I feel like they do more than other days for sure. But
enough.
I appreciate you having that observation. And, believe me, I'm far from perfect. There's a lot of things I wish I could do better, interpersonal stuff, because it is a challenge to work close. I don't have those layers of like, when I worked at Dell, for instance, there are layers upon layers upon layers of management and in between. And so there's a lot of that gets filtered through the processes, right? But when it's me talking directly to staff and maybe I'm already dealing with 5 other things, then there can be challenges in that, right? So because it's a working environment day to day, and unlike a lot of businesses, we of course are not selling a product,
right?
It's a weird kind of concept for people to grasp when they're new. It's like we're selling an idea and a service. If we are selling anything, in other words, that's what it is. But I feel like the sales part takes care of itself inherently with just putting out a good product, being the service we provide on a nightly basis. So, I try to do my best to lead by example. And like I say, some days I do that better than others for sure. So
no, that's great. I mean, that's the challenge of small business, right? Is you're managing your people directly, and there is not I don't know if it's a luxury of Dell. I think that there's a luxury to be able to manage your people directly, and
there are definitely benefits, and then there are some negatives too, right? So if I'm telling someone who is a messenger that's going to go then tell somebody else down the line, I can convey things in a different way and make sure they are now conveying it to that team, whereas I'm sort of having to bring all that to the forefront right away, and there's not a lot of time for me to filter things through. I get to filter it directly through them. So if I'm doing something and going in a direction that isn't a positive one, then sometimes I get to find out about it, after the fact. So
you in like watching you run games. So let me tell you a quick story. It'll make this question make more sense. So we used to play this small game. We used to live in New Braunfels, and when Steve moved to New Braunfels from Colorado, he's like, we got to find where's poker happening. I was like, I don't know. Wasn't ever really on my radar. This was, I don't know, more than 13 years ago. And so he's like, oh, I'll figure it out. So we started playing. We were probably playing 4 nights a week. There's the Tobacco House and Scores where we would go play. And and there were some other places that we just didn't catch because the game wasn't consistent. And in both the Tobacco House and Scores, there was Melinda, this lady Melinda ran the game, and she was no bullshit. Like, her call was the last call. She always ran a fair game. They would do 2 tournaments twice a week, and then we would go to Scores. And there was this guy, his name was Red. And frankly, at the like Red was always just like, he was also an umpire. Like his day job was being like an umpire, but then he was also, he ran the game, and Red ran a clean game. He was nobody's favorite person. He was like very business, very much an umpire, but like what you could count on was like very clear communication, very fair communication. And I feel like I'm not comparing you to Red because Red was a bit of a fun joke. Not a joke. He wasn't a joke. He was great, but like he ran a strong game. But you have this like ability to communicate so clearly with like your in a way that's like very kind and very respectful to both the players, and then you communicate so well to your team, kind of at the same like in tandem. You can go from like back to forth, and so like how do you do that in the moment?
Well, you know. Sometimes I am talking to both audiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
The staff that's around, and a player asks a question, I can sort of be informing everybody. So just, 101 in sales from where I came from was always like, okay, identify your audience.
Yeah.
And the more I can know and identify who is listening to me, I think the better I can try to present that in a way that will be understood.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I'm going to explain things to a seasoned dealer is far different than how I would interact with someone who just walked in for the first time and wants to know about our tournaments, obviously. So,
right.
And then there's a whole spectrum in between there
Sure.
that I just sort of have to make a judgment and get to know the person enough to say, okay, here's where I'm guessing you're at. And so now I can kind of go from there to inform. And at the end of the day, the same things I wanted to know when I'm new is the same things everybody else wants to know. Like,
right.
What is this going to cost me in total?
Right.
Like if you're coming into a tournament the first time, that's what you want to know.
Right.
Don't tell me an initial buy-in if there's rebuys. Tell me, what is this going to totally cost me? What's the average buy-in? Whatever. How many chips am I getting? How long is this going to last? When is this going to be over? Those are the basic things that anybody logically wants to know, right?
Sure.
So we try to cut to the chase and answer those questions, certainly for our new players. And it's funny we're on this subject because we were just in a meeting earlier this week with our staff, kind of reconveying a lot of those things like, hey, make sure we are always identifying the new player, because the new player is who we want. Earlier you said something about how everyone gets to know each other and you said they play together. I would like to clarify on that, because what I can say is we go to great lengths to make sure no one is actually literally playing together.
Yes, that was in no way my
No, and
point.
I figured that.
But that's
but
good to
anyone
clarify.
who's listening may think, But the truth is, when a new player comes in, I brought that up to say, because when a new player comes in, naturally, when they see everyone getting along so well,
right.
Somebody who may have just met you a week before, but now y'all are fast friends and talking. So when a new player walks in,
right.
They see that and they're like, wow, I'm not going to fit in here. Or I don't know if it's going to be me versus 8 players. Well, what I can tell you is that is very rare. Now, it happens in poker in general a lot.
Sure.
Like if you remember the movie Rounders,
mm-hmm.
It's not like we were playing against each other, Matt Damon's character said, but we just weren't playing with these couple of tourists that were coming in. It was kind of us, the regulars, versus them. But it's really a different feel, I would say, at
mm-hmm.
Bullets, because most of our regulars aren't, and this is no offense to any of my friends at Bullets, but they're mostly not seasoned players
sure.
that even think in those terms in the first place.
Right.
They come there because they want to have some fun. Most of our players, for the most part, if they win 500 or 1,000 or they lose 500 or 1,000, they're going to be like, all right, have a good night. See y'all later. And they leave with the same energy and body language that they would if they won.
Yeah.
And that's kind of unique. Most of my old games back in the day were not like that. You could
sure.
see it on their face when they leave if they lost, and you could tell on their face when they won. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that Bullets isn't kind of the norm in that regard. So it makes it cool. But I feel like a player is going to get a fair shake and get to know the people, and pretty soon they're going to be in that in crowd just as quick.
Yeah, I agree. We've been not as much as we want to go, but always everyone. I never felt like anyone was ganging up. It didn't feel like that at all. They just know each other,
right?
Just and they know they like. You learn about their families and their jobs and all the things. It's very, very cool. I think something that you guys do. So we have a game here in Easton Park that Steve started many years ago, and I think this year he's going to pass it off to the next leader, which is very exciting, and we're excited to see how that goes. But they started playing bomb pots, and so it was like we have the little bomb pot button that would go around, and but you do a bomb pot tournament, which gets everybody all juicy. Like, can you tell us about like your bomb pot tournament?
Well, very simply, yes. It's on Monday nights. We started it because players asked for it. And actually, the evolution was They first asked us for an all bomb pots tournament, and that's what we
Oof.
did. And
Okay.
every hand was a bomb pot, which literally, if I could show you on a scale, it went like player count up and then immediately off a cliff because
Oh, sure.
it's too much of a good thing, I guess, is too much. You know, I'll be honest, going back to bomb pots in general, when they first started coming around, which was in probably like bomb pots were starting to get popular right as we opened about 5.5 years ago. And so I honestly, my honest appraisal is this is a fad and it's going to go away. And boy, was I wrong. I mean, they are here and they're here to stay. A lot of people love them. Now,
They
there
love
are a
them.
few that don't, and they wish we didn't have bomb pots. And if we were being selfish as a business, we would not have bomb pots because they kill people's bankrolls.
Right.
And we're in an hourly seat system. And so, who wants to make people leave earlier if we can keep the game running longer? But the truth is, again, for players by players, our players want bomb pots, so we have bomb pots. So,
Yeah.
but when they asked for the bomb pot tournament, it started, like I said, all bomb pots. That quickly subsided, the popularity of that. So we sort of meshed together a hold'em tournament, but with one round of bomb pot, just like the cash game does.
Yeah.
So the difference is the ante for the big blind for the bomb pot is always whatever the big blind is. That's the ante for every player.
Oh, so as it goes up, the ante gets
Absolutely.
bigger.
So it gets bigger with every round. And otherwise, it's just the rest of the hands are 1, 2, or, you know, or the,
Sure.
the regular hold'em game. In other
Yeah.
words, it start at 100, 200.
Yeah, I have no business in that tournament. Bomb pots freak me out. The problem is, I'll start playing them towards the end of the night after I've had a couple drinks. And I'm like, whatever. and then you win one, right? And you're like, oh, this is amazing. But there's no skill in my brain for it. But lots of guys love it.
Well, two things I'll say to that is one, the bomb pot tournament is exactly where you need to be then. Because if
Why?
you don't like bomb pots or you're intimidated by them, it's a $20 rebuy tournament.
Oh, okay.
So literally, like, to learn at $20 a hand versus at $200 you bought in or whatever you
Sure.
bought in for, night and day. Because when I say you can lose your whole stack in a bomb pot, as you guys know, you can definitely lose your whole stack in
real
a bomb
fast.
pot. That also means, though, you can benefit like that and win a lot from a bomb pot. So there are two sides to the coin. What besides saying that the bomb pot tournament is a great way to learn if you're better than cash, I wanted to also point out that, and this is just going to be under the heading of free poker advice
Okay.
that I would love to give all the audience, anyone who's going to listen now and down the road. To me, bomb pots are like a lottery ticket.
Okay.
You pay your ante and you see if you hit the lottery, and then you fold right away. What a lot of players do is they go, well, I've got all these outs. Let me just see a turn. And then you put more money into the pot. And then you see the flop, you see the turn. Now you're on the river. And now you're like, well, now I only have $80 behind. I might as well. And that, so it's like a avalanche of mentality that I think gets a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah.
Whereas I am looking for excuses to fold.
Oh, you're like, it's
Okay.
like backwards.
Yes. So unlike, because believe me when I tell you, if there is a flush draw, someone has it, and very likely it's the nuts. Not all the time, but very likely, because they have 4 cards times everyone at the table,
Right.
plus 2 boards. So do you always have draws? Yep. But does everybody else? Yep. And like, so straights, for instance, no, a lot of people don't realize, like, if you have a king jack and it comes ace queen 10, I have the nuts. I have a straight, yes, but 3 other people may also have that same straight.
Right.
And so getting quartered or eighth in a bomb pot or 16th even
Yeah.
is terrible and is not good for your bankroll or your sanity.
Right.
So, like, again, I try to look for reasons to get away from the hand and really only invest money beyond that ante when I know I have a really good hand. And to me, a really good hand in the bomb pot is I got to have both boards. It doesn't
Okay.
mean I have to have the nuts. What I'm saying is, like, if I flop 2 pair and a nut flush draw on the other board, great. That is a hand I can get behind.
Okay.
If I flop a set, even on a straighted board, like last night, 6-3-2, I know someone could have 4-5, but I flopped a set, top set on that board, and I flopped a set on the other board because I literally had 2 pair of my 4 cards in my hand. So that's a hand I could get aggressive with, even though I know I already could be beat on one board. I'm willing to commit my chips at that point. And then from there, you just got to give it up to the poker gods and hope for the best, because you can do everything right and think you have the perfect hand to be in there with and still end up a loser. And that's the beauty of poker. It stinks when it happens to you, but if it wasn't that way and I got aces and now I'm guaranteed to win, it would not be we wouldn't be talking
fun.
right now.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's
no way.
the mystery of it is the
Absolutely.
fun part. And and you're right, you can do everything right. And I think that's what's hard for me with poker is I can know what I'm supposed to do. And Stevie, something that we used to do when I grew up playing dumb poker, as a kid, and I've always been playing Texas Hold'em. But he used to he'd be like, okay, we'd go through the top 10 hands and he'd be like, what do you do on the blinds on this one? What do you do on the blinds on that one? How much do you raise? How much, you're in this position. What do you do? And he would just drill me. We were moving houses and he'd be like, all right, queen, ace, offsuit. What do you do? And I don't know right now. It's been a while. It's been 12 years since we've done that. But it is you can do everything right. And that guy that's I always play my twos all in, and you're like, oh, he's got quads. You're like, that's just part of it,
A lot of pros don't like to play with novice, new amateur players. And you know why? Because you can't put somebody on a hand.
Right.
If they're not using logic to play the hand, right? So it can actually infuriate a lot of pros to play with amateurs. I personally have no problem with it because I understand philosophically that in the long run, I believe my style of play will have better results. Other people can do whatever they want. We have people that come to our club every night and they will play any two, and I mean any two. So it's funny. You ask, what do I do when you have what do you do when you have ace queen? How much do you bet? Well, I wouldn't be able to answer that because so many other things I need to know besides just I have ace queen, I need to know before I can answer that. Who is my audience? Who's at that table?
Yeah.
How do they play? What position am I at the table? Am I up or down? All these things I'm considering. And if I get a call from an opponent who I know is up or down or is in a good mood or bad mood or whatever, then all these things can change the way I'm betting at them.
Yeah.
If I know let's say as an easy example, there's $400 in the pot and I bet $10 at you on the turn. That would be almost like you're posturing now. You're certainly not trying to really bet $10. You're trying to elicit a response. Maybe it's called the cheap bet or whatever. And sometimes I've seen even people get away from hands because they're like, oh my gosh, you really want me to call. But a lot of times they don't think that. They think you're playing a game. So that posturing and that jostling can go back and forth and develop over the course of hours, days, weeks, months, years even,
Right.
So it's a fun evolution. So if he drilled me on that, I would fail miserably is all I'm saying. So don't knock yourself for not knowing what to do with ace queen.
Awesome. And I think that it's cool because like what Steve was just saying is that people come for dinner and
True.
They can eat at the table. And you guys have lots of the tables that I've never felt like there was a lacking of anything at Bullets. You can bring the little tables that come up by
the
your
little
chair.
card tables,
which is great.
And they have a couple of cup holders on them too. So, and a lot of times our players, if it is super busy, then we don't actually have a table per person, obviously. So two people that sit next to each other may share and put their food on that little table. But you can also quickly and easily get that table out of the way if you need to get up and go run to the restroom or go outside or whatever it may be. So those are handy for sure.
Your chairs are also super comfy. You guys probably spent some money on those chairs, and I think in the best way because it's very comfortable.
Yes, we talked about this a little bit earlier before we got on camera here that those chairs have been great, and yes, that was definitely a very conscious choice to do an uncomfortably aggressive budget just for chairs, even though we did not want to when we're just opening a new business, but we felt like it was a necessity because if people aren't comfortable, look, I have a bad back myself. So if I cannot sit in a comfortable chair, I am looking for the door.
Yeah.
I can't help it. My body's going to demand it. Right. So we wanted to have that for everyone, right? And make sure lack of comfort should not be the reason you're leaving. Let me put it that way.
Lack of money, perhaps,
right?
But not comfort.
Again, we get people that come in for 2 hours, but when you get somebody who's coming in literally, we started the game today, I think at like 3 o'clock, and they may be there till 5 a.m.
Right.
You need to have a comfortable chair for them to sit in, because that's just too many hours to be sitting if you're not in a comfortable supportive chair.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, we've had those chairs for 5 years. We've certainly bought some of those same models to replace ones that broke, but now they don't sell them anymore, and we're ready to kind of move on. So next year we're looking to actually get some even better options. We have a new partner who is a player at our club. Actually, that's how we met him.
Awesome.
And it turns out he owns a chair company. So he's literally been very helpful in getting us new dealer chairs, massage chair, and soon to come now next year, he says we can work on the rest of the chairs. And there'll be a smaller footprint. That's the only negative about our chairs now, is they are wide. And
I think
so
it's great. You can like cross your legs. It's
true,
okay.
True.
Like, it's so cozy.
But we think we can narrow that a little bit so
Yeah.
it's more comfortable for everyone around the table when it's full, especially. Those chairs can really make it challenging from that perspective. So if we can get more cushion and comfort and more ergonomics out of a new chair that still looks great too, then check, and we're ready to roll. So
winner. We were talking about the food earlier. What I think you've also been really smart to do is that you have like microwaves and coffee pots, and like people, if they wanted to bring their own food or like, you've really created a very homey situation.
Yes, and again, that was definitely by design, because at the end of the day, whatever makes you comfortable is what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things that is a bridge too far as a business, right? But for the most part, any reasonable request that we can do to make your time more comfortable, let's hear it, because we'd love to do it. That's how we're going to improve as a business and continue to do what we do better. Because again, I can't stress this enough. Unlike most businesses where you have products you produce or manufacture and then you put on the shelf and then somebody goes and sells them, we have none of that, right? So our business is the players.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will, I don't think, ever lose focus of that, because quite frankly, that is our business.
That's your widget.
Right. I mean, to lose focus on the players and what makes them want to keep coming back is what's going to continue to drive us.
Yeah. I don't know if you're going to take this as a compliment or an insult, but I have to say it, with my 15 years of HR experience, you would be an incredible HR manager. You think of, like, you talk about like, I need this chair, so everyone must have this chair. Like, you're talking about treating everyone the same and being like, that's so if you ever, get bored at Bullets, we're always looking for people to help us in human resources.
I'm sure some of my staff might disagree with you on me being good for HR.
I'm sure some of my staff might disagree with me being good for HR.
You told me before we started that I can cuss like a sailor on here, and most of my staff would tell you that he's got no problem doing that a lot of the time. I have to try to bite my tongue sometimes in the club, because again, not everyone is as receptive to those kind of things as others are. So
that kind of feedback.
Yes, I typically do act like a sailor, to be honest, in that regard, when I feel like it's the right environment. But not always the right environment. And like I say, some of my staff would probably laugh seeing that last thing you just said.
Hey, I've done it a long time. I can pick them out, but I think that man, people are hard, and they're all. It's a beautiful thing, but you're also dealing with we talked about it before, just a vast amount of personalities and skill level and expectation, and then you throw money into that, and then there's winners and losers. It could be quite turbulent.
True, absolutely, no question, and it can differ. I will definitely not be naming any names, but we've had a couple of instances where we had players over the course of the years we've had Bullets open that have come in, and they just seem to be in a negative mood every time they come. And what we notice, and I've had my share of psychology classes, and so I understand, like, yes, one person can actually, their energy can bring down an entire room of people if you're not careful, and we are attuned to that.
I think it's reasonable to react, to have feelings when you're like, shit, I just lost $1,000, and it's okay to be mad in that moment. It's okay to feel negative towards your play and maybe not so happy about the guy who's like, whoa, which there's not a lot of like boasting at Bullets, I've noticed. It's a very polite game.
It happens, but it is very rare. I would agree.
Which is, I think that comes with it. Like, it's like poker etiquette, right? Like, sure, you might have just won $1,000, but you also won it from someone else. Like, let's be considerate of the people.
Agreed.
But what you're talking about, not someone who's in kind of a shitty mood for a couple of, maybe a couple hands, 3 or 5 hands, whatever, after a bad beat. You're talking like
Every
a consistent
single time.
negative.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
And there are some people in the world that are just like that. They
Yeah.
are surly by nature, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But to come into our place and mess it up for everybody else made us kind of make some decisions. Is it the one or the many?
Right. Right.
And we had to sort of take that approach. But
Yeah.
All along those lines, a lot of times, because our players over time get to know each other, sometimes even quickly, even when they are mad at each other, they're like, "Oh man, you're such a jerk," and then they're like laughing about it a minute later. So
Sure.
it really helps to just diffuse. And the other thing I'd say is, just from a sort of basic human level, if you walk into a place and everyone is sort of either neutral or negative, then you might follow suit naturally, even if you don't consciously want to. But when everyone is more upbeat, which generally at our place it is,
True.
then I've seen people kind of come in neutral and then immediately they just follow suit, and they want to be one of the crowd. A lot of people have called our place Cheers. Because
I love that.
you walk in, and when when we get to know you, we're going to call you out by name and say, "Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going tonight? Come on in."
Yeah.
You know.
No, it's really cool. And I think too, I do have to say this because I haven't made it like a passion or like a project for myself, but I love to see women play poker, and you don't see a lot of it. And I will firmly say that at Bullets, as a woman playing poker, and I've seen women play poker at Bullets most every time I'm there. There's other women. Mm-hmm. It's certainly mostly men, but there's a like with your staff, I think there's like a sense of responsibility for the dealers and even just like the people working the front desk and the girls, there's like I've never felt unsafe. And even like walking out, because you never know, like when you're walking, you could be walking out with a ton of cash, like
Sure.
even asking for like a chaperone out to the parking lot, which can be, it's lit. I think it's lit well, but it's still, if you're a lady walking out by yourself to a parking lot with the potential to have money, like there has never been like, "Oh, ma'am, can you wait? I need to do this," or whatever. Like I've always I do want to make that known for women who may not know that it, like, always have felt incredibly safe. The bathrooms are very clean. I've always felt respected. Like it's a thing. And I think that it goes a long way. And every time I've been there, there's women playing. And so I just think women should play more poker.
We completely agree, actually. And to that end, we have done a lot of things to try to promote. Like, for instance, we have a ladies' night every week where it's literally every Friday.
Okay.
Literally, there's no membership fees, no hourly fees either. If you are a female and you want to come play poker, that's all it takes, and you're in.
Okay, I'll round up
that's
some
every
ladies.
Friday. Absolutely.
Okay.
You definitely should, because we agree. Look, to be honest with you, again, going back to the psychology of poker, on average, most men are less willing to behave horribly when there's females around. It's like a docile sort of reality that keeps people in check. Yeah. Now, it doesn't always work, but it often works. Yeah. And so, and that's one of 1,000 reasons I could give you why I think you're right. More women should be playing. And I think a lot of women do want to play. And I think you hit it on the head. But if they don't feel safe and secure when they're going to a place, though, then they're just not going to bother. They're not even going to try it.
Right.
So I agree with you. I wish more women that want to play poker knew about our club, because I do think we try to cater to all players, but we identified very quickly that you have to give an extra layer of that comfort and welcomeness, I feel like, for the average woman versus a man, whereas a lot of men are like, whatever, just tell me where I'm sitting and let's go.
Right.
So, and what we do also do, our security, like they walk everyone, at least visually, they walk everyone to their vehicles. Yeah. And that's not just women, that's everybody, because like you said, where there's money, there's always a chance that somebody might try to take advantage of that.
Yeah,
and so,
in Vegas with the I mean, it's
it's
anywhere.
rampant out there, absolutely.
And it's not location or anything. I think it's anywhere where there's potential for money.
Sure.
It's dangerous. But those guys have been more than, and the last time I was there, that you had one of your guys out standing in the parking lot. You guys I think that you take safety very seriously, and the cleanliness of it too. I think that, I wasn't sure the first time we went, but again, clean bathrooms go a long way.
Very important. Absolutely.
In your like they are very clean.
That is, to me, every time I go to any business and their bathroom is really dirty, to me, that is a true way to look and see how are they doing business?
Right.
Do they care about what's happening in their business?
Right.
If their bathrooms are dirty, that is a very telling thing.
I agree.
So, and it can happen in spots, right? In
It's
between
real
cleanings
life,
or whatever.
of
But
course.
when you consistently see, and we aren't probably perfectly clean all the time either, because
No one
poker
is.
players are
Right.
in there.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those poker players.
Fair enough.
So when you're in a hurry and you're trying to get back out to see your hand, not always do they keep the place they just left clean. The towels may be on the ground, but we have cleaning service that comes in every night,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
And they are doing the proper things to scrub and sanitize and the little things that
You can tell.
are a necessity, I feel like. And then throughout the night, we're also going in and tidying up and cleaning up where we need to as well.
Yeah, and I think that I don't think anyone's expecting perfection in a bathroom all the time, especially
Right.
when there's, so many people in and out. And I think that is something to know about poker is you got to get back to especially in a tournament, you've got to get back. Your time is money. But it's just, it's never, everything about your club is clean and professional and comfortable. And so again, just for, and you're right, men, the standard is much lower for most, maybe not for all,
yes,
maybe
not
not for
all,
all,
but
but
most,
for
yes.
women, there's a I think it's really more the feeling of safety. And like you said, if the bathrooms are for shit and, you feel kind of whatever, there's no, that's it's all levels of safety.
Absolutely.
And I've never felt unsafe. So, okay, so moving on to something more fun than women's restrooms and safety, which you do very well. But so your nickname is JBALL. Mm-hmm. Where does that come from?
Well, my name is James Ball,
Okay.
and so when I was very little, I went by Jamie.
Okay.
And then I think about 9, I decided and I declared it to my whole family. I am no longer Jamie. I'm going by Jay.
Okay.
And for 6 months, I would ignore them with Jamie, and I just ignore them until they go, Jay.
Okay.
And so my family mostly call me Jay.
Okay.
But in the poker world, for some reason, and my best guess, again, human psychology, why does everyone do this? My best guess is because Jay's only one syllable, and so that's just not quite enough. And so they use my last name. And so what's hilarious about this, when JBALL, there are a lot of people that meet me and hear people call me that. And so they assume it's just a nickname, JBALL.
It's really your full name.
It's actually just I've had friends for one case. I knew a guy for over 5 years, somewhere in that realm. And he's like, dude, your name is not Jay. And I said, dude, my name is actually J Ball. My last name is Ball. And he literally argued with me to where I had to pull out my ID because he was just convinced, no, that's a nickname. What is your actual name? So in any way, and it is Jay,
not JBALL. We'll get to that in a second because I do have to tell you a funny story. Steve was like, we've got James Ball coming on the podcast. And I was like, cool. Okay, can't wait. And then he was like, for a couple days. And then the other day I was like, what does James Ball do? And he's like, poker. And I was like, what? And he's like, JBALL. And I was like, oh, JBALL.
Oh, that guy I know.
I know that guy. And I was like, how cool is that? But it was really funny. I don't know. I was like, that sounds like a finance guy. James Ball's coming to talk to us about annuities. So is it, the hand is it? Tell us about this.
Okay,
well, let me preface it because we're looking at a screen that our viewers can't see. But this was the first time we ever played with you. I think you said you were like, I will always play King 9.
Well, that is a fact.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And is that called JBALL?
Well, so I have never called it that. I've always called it King 9. Okay. King 9. And yes, so when I say I've been touting it for a long time, literally since I started playing poker, I don't know why, I just got it in my head that was my favorite hand.
Okay.
And so naturally I wanted to tell others that that's my favorite hand. And so it just became a thing. And apparently 15 years ago, I don't know how long Wikipedia has been a thing, but at some point somebody put up on Wikipedia starting hands and then nicknames for those hands.
Oh, no.
So you go to ace, and there's all these nicknames. Well, when you go to, and it's not just, I think it's poker nickname starting hands in Wikipedia because I hear him typing over there. But in any event, someone sent me a picture of what they were looking up one day, and under King Nine, the first one, it says there was like 16 nicknames, by the way, for King Nine. The first one was the dog.
Okay.
And the second one was JBALL. And then it even gives a description, which hopefully you can pull up. But what it said was, surmising here was, oh, this player in Austin promoted the hand so much and always talked about how it was the nuts. And so people started referring to it as the JBALL. And what's funny is, I don't really remember people ever saying that's the J. It's more like JBALL, come here. Look, I used to have to tell people at the club, dude, when you call me over and you're in a hand and you're telling me, JBALL, come check this out, just so you know, you've just exposed King Nine.
Right.
Because there's no other reason you would call me over. That. So quit calling me over because, dude, you're telling everyone you have King Nine now. So
hilarious. I will tell you that ever since knowing the King Nine, the JBALL, I do play it more than I normally. You've impacted my poker game.
Before I even knew Doral's quote about a minute to learn and a lifetime to master, I definitely found that out for myself, because it's like, well, I know what beats what, but how come this person is always winning?
Yeah.
And how come I'm never winning?
Right.
And I didn't read any books, to be honest. It's not that I'm against reading a book. I just, maybe other than Doral Brunson, I've never ever put anybody who plays poker on a pedestal. Okay. So I feel like, okay, if you play this way and it works for you, great. But I don't need to read your book about it.
Sure, yeah,
because that's what works for you, and it may not work at all for many other people, right? Maybe it does. So I don't knock people that read poker books, because maybe they do pick up things that they didn't consider, and now they're focused on it and considering how that works for their game. But for me, I just sort of had an inclination to want to learn the hard way, I guess, and evolve naturally. So when I would do things that I see were getting bad results, then I could make those adjustments. And sometimes I would literally copy other people I was watching and emulate them until I figured out what was working best for me. It's a game of observation. Yeah. And so fine-tuning that observation down to like the way someone is touching their nail or the way one eye may twitch, little subtle things, maybe nothing and insignificant, or it may mean everything.
Yeah. We had the opportunity to talk to, he lives here in our neighborhood. His name is Drake Kemper. He's a new poker player. He started out as a child actor on Disney back in the day. Okay. And then he became a race car driver. Like a successful,
like you do,
as one does. And then he was super famous on Twitch and made like a ton of money selling Pokemon cards on Twitch, like streaming platforms. And then he's like, I could play poker, and is now like, he's 6 months in, I think, and in the money. And he was in Vegas. I think he's in Vegas now, or was recently in Vegas. And like, I say kid, I think we're about the same age. He's in his mid to late 30s, but like he just put his head down, and he has decided that he is a poker, and like, this is what he does for a living now. Like, and it's really fun to watch. But he was talking about like, we should introduce you guys, because I think it would be really cool, because he's recently gotten sober and like kind of going in this new way of life, and he's just an incredible guy. But he should go play at Bullets, not to get paid, but to just go play with your group, because I think he would fit in really well. And but we should introduce you guys, because that'd be great. He's super cool, and like, and he's a race car driver and child actor. I mean,
and you said 6 months playing poker.
Yeah,
well, that's pretty cool. You know, there are some people that may not realize it right now out there in the world who've never played poker, but they have the perfect toolkit, I'll call it, for being a good poker player, right? Because like we touched on way earlier, all the different elements besides just looking at the cards and saying, okay, well, I have king, I'm going to do nine. X, or King Nine, my favorite. You really know how to make me happy. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of other factors. And so some people are just more natural at being able to pick up on that. Being able to read people isn't a poker thing. I have that skill set already. Usually it's hard for people to learn how to read people if it's not in their toolkit.
Yep.
So some people do it, some people don't or can't or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's just not their suit. Some people, like I have a good friend of mine who is all about the math, and in his mind, poker is just on the math and the odds. I totally disagree with that. Math and the odds are one of multiple considerations to take into every hand. But the people, the audience, to me is a much bigger part. Who I'm playing is much more important in how I'm going to decide what style of play I'm going to go from hand to hand, or overall what tricks I might pull out of the bag from hand to hand. Or what I might show them in this hand to wait till I get a strong hand next time to show them something similar. So like if I try to never show cards and show hands, but I do a lot anyway at my club, unfortunately, because I want to make people feel comfortable that I'm not just saying I'm playing good hands and not bluffing you, but I'm showing proof of that, because poker players are stubborn and don't like to believe people in general. That's a good thing, by the way. Absolutely. You should have that healthy distrust, I feel like. So I do tend to show at my club, but anywhere else I would never do that, unless if I show a tell, let's say, whether I'm consciously doing it or realized after, I just showed a tell. And if, let's say, I'm bluffing in that moment, then I might show a bluff just to make sure I show the same tell later when I'm strong, or vice versa. It's like a lot of chess games being played, because if I think my opponent knows that I'm going to do that, then I might have to switch gears to a third gear too. So it's like all these different little branches that come off.
Yeah.
And it's certainly, you never can just drive down the same path the whole time. You really have to be willing to take those quick lefts and rights and end up maybe getting back to the same path, but definitely veer off in the meantime.
It's like no, and that's so right. Like, you can't just have one strategy, just like life. You can't have one. You got to have a couple backup plans. I will say my favorite poker table to play at is when we're traveling and we're going to casinos, which we love to do. Like, it's kind of been something that we've done recently, where it's like, okay, wherever we're going to go, if we can stay at a casino, we will, because I can do the spa thing. Steve can play significantly more poker than me, and there's likely a golf course, right? Like, it's like the three things that we're really good at, or that he's really good at. I'm good at the spa, but he's good at the other two things. But I love sitting down. I mean, no disrespect by saying this to anyone listening, but I love sitting down to a table with men in their 60s and 70s, and I sit down, because for a short amount of time I can kind of play this oops, I didn't know what I was doing, and win money, and then on a cash game, and then stand up and leave and be like, thank you so much, sir. And they just, I think that it's
thanks, bye.
Yeah, bye. Thanks so much for your dollars. Where do I go to get my, but it's, I think you have to play personas too, depending on the situations that you're in and what table you're sitting at and what's going on. And it's interesting.
And that is a very interesting topic, because I said a minute ago that some people have a natural toolkit for poker, whether they know it or not. Well, I think women, on average, and again, these are broad generalizations, right? But on average, I would say most women have a much better natural toolkit than men.
Yeah.
Men, unfortunately, deal with ego. Men, unfortunately, deal with trying to impress the girl that just sat down at the table. So they're not trying to take your money now. They're trying to impress you.
Right.
Because guys are very simple. And I'm including myself in this, so I'm not pointing the finger outward. I'm saying in all honesty that we can be pretty simple, us guys. And again, a cute girl comes in, game over for probably half the table. I'm being serious. I've watched people literally lose all of their credibility at the table and crumble their stack. And it's because they're trying to dote on a girl instead of focused on the game.
Yeah.
But again, that's a human being's choice, I suppose. And so if women who have those kind of toolkits and know how to interact with people, I believe you can naturally take advantage of that. And I encourage it, to be honest, because why not? It'll either make your opponents figure out that's what's going on and adjust their game, or they'll go broke trying to impress you and make you feel like you're a good person for being in there. So either way, win-win for you, right?
Yeah, win-win. Oh, Shorty.
You guys know Shorty well. He's a regular in our club for sure. His actual name is Aaron.
Okay.
He's a really cool guy. We call him Shorty because he's 7'1".
He's
So why
very
wouldn't you
large
call
animal.
this large guy Shorty? But yeah, he owns a restaurant called Culver's.
Yeah.
Which is right at Burnett, or excuse me, Burnett. I'm misfiring.
what is
but
it?
Brody
Brody.
and William Cannon. And honestly, humble brag for a minute about my diet. I haven't eaten fast food in years. That is the only place I make it as an exception because
Really?
their food is just that good. And it doesn't hurt that it's pretty close to my house
Yeah.
and the club. So it's convenient for me regularly. But yeah, I love that place. And we have, of course, fast food doesn't necessarily hold up as long when you try to cater it and have it delivered.
Yeah.
So we've tried to do it for the club a couple of times, but it's easier said than done for the freshness factor. And that's really important for them at Culver's too.
Yeah, of course.
They don't want us, serving, dried out food or whatever it may be because it's been an hour after we brought it home or whatever.
I think,
it's a good spot to check out for sure.
Yeah, I think that Shorty is a really good example of the kind of people at the club. He was so welcoming and so fun and just super friendly and just good people. There's really good people at Bullets.
Well, not to out him too much, but he was like I was saying earlier about when people come in, the first couple of months, never said a word to hardly anybody.
Oh, he's just shy.
He was so quiet
Yeah.
and just kept to himself. And then, but boy, once that petal bloomed, it was a whole different story. So, and we a lot of us really love him a lot. We're very close to him. He's a really great guy and happens to have a really good place to eat as well. So that's always a bonus.
Awesome. JBALL, James Ball, but JBALL is what you go by in my mind. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you for having me again. I really appreciate it.
It was a really good time. So anyone in Easton Park or anywhere, go see JBALL at Bullets. He'll welcome you with open arms and feed you good food and give you drinks and play poker with you.
Absolutely. Anybody who can hear this would be eligible for the offer I'll make now. Anybody that's brand new, we can offer you your first month membership, which is normally $25. We can offer that to you for your first month. And we'll also offer you a discount or matching on your first hours for the cash game. Now, for tournaments, we do things like we actually just give you a membership when you play a tournament. So if you're a tournament player only, then you can come and never have to buy a membership because you'll always get one from our tournaments.
Awesome.
And certainly we can work on another way to give you some credits towards tournaments if you don't want to play cash. But certainly we will try to take care and welcome our newcomers for sure.
Thanks, JBALL.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time.